Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. Let people know I've gone live. And in the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. You guys, it has been a really interesting day for me to wake up and right away go into those projects. And I'm not usually somebody who moves about and listens in the background. I don't find that normally I absorb things very well unless I'm actually sitting there and actually paying attention because for me, I don't know about other people, but for me, I have to see the presenter, which is strange saying that because I've recently taken on a couple of content creators where they don't show up, right? You don't see them. They're in the background and they switch out. It's the age of AI learning. I understand that. And I am just grateful that people are finding ways to get their ideas out there, to get their word out there, to make an impact, to be seen, to be heard. I think it's absolutely just amazing that, in those small ideas and those baby steps, those amounts that you can manage before you just lose it, right? But it's the idea to know how far you're pushing yourself because you don't want to push yourself so hard. And for the beginning of me, right, I wanted things yesterday and I thought things were going to manifest today, meaning 10 years ago. And that's the mentality I've always kept for myself. But that is in reality not the case. It is a process. Your life is a process, and not only your life, but your passions and your work, and the idea is to fit it all in together like a package without letting one part of you suffer needlessly. There are times when you have to buckle down because this is a season of lessons and you need to be paying attention. Other times, it's I've got to get away from this because, it's those stress and those problems that arise in my life are starting to show up. And those are the signals for me to kind of lay back a little bit and pay attention to how I talk to myself, how I treat myself. And and when I say that, it's in the way how we pick on those faults that we've always been picked on for. That not only do others have mentioned it or drilled it into you or pointed it out, but you've done that yourself, right? You've done that to yourself. And these are things that highly sensitives and empaths, right? We tend to, I'm being distracted by the truck, but if they come by, I'll wish, I'm wishing them some good cheer anyway. Get to your destination, be a false alarm, right? Okay. So come bring me back to the main trunk of the tree, right? The main trunk of the tree, and just making sure that we are feeling good about where we're at in the moment, understanding we're only human. And, this idea of taking care of the human is right pretty recent, and we have increased our life expectations because we are right physically taking care of ourselves, but also that longevity can be attributed to the fact that we're able to bring some stress levels down, right? This is what AI is supposed to do for us in the future, because we're just walking into stuff that we don't know. All we're doing is speculating and guessing. But we still got to make that movement into that, right? And this is the way that I think for the next, oh my goodness, right? Unless we're getting that seventh Earth extinction thing going on, this is the way it's going to be. And it's just not going to be this light. I think it's going to go so deep that some of those things that that we depended on, like writing, right? Like writing now is like an art form, because we have these spelling apps and grammar apps, and you can just give baseline for songs, and you can create songs, and you can give baselines for storylines, and the next thing you know, AI in 15 minutes can write you a book, and you're putting your authorship on that. And I don't mean to criticize in that, but I work on the opposite end. So it's something that I have to take note, because it's a very human aspect, right? To see what's genuine. I try to do that in my landscape photos. You guys know when I explore the inside and the outside, and you'll find if you go into my park explores and my park tour videos, that you'll see at the end of every video I give a an array of some of these landscape shots that I pick up on these trips. But I don't spice them up. I don't beautify them. I don't put them through editing programs to enhance them in any way. It's the genuine beauty of that moment that I was in. And I think, going into the future, I think a lot of, right? Even on National Geographic, I watched the program National Geographic. It was all about I don't mean to go off, but the grizzly bears up north, on the salmon runs, and getting fat, and getting ready to stock up and go to sleep for the winter. And it's magnificent that you take us out on that journey to see the beautiful landscapes of the northern part of North America, and the wildlife. And it is National Geographic. We expect to see the genuine. But this program that I watched, it was AI. The bears were AI, the other wildlife was AI, the landscapes were all created in AI, and I was a little bit discouraged by that. I sat through the National Geographic. The information was there, but I wasn't connecting, because all I could say was that it was phony baloney. Because especially for these programs, um, there was a life insurance program that they had in the 70s that was really popular. We watched it every week. It was really important that we were educated in matters of different parts of the world, and nature was a big part of our life, even though we only spent 6 months on a farm. That's what it came to. But we did a lot of wilderness stuff. We just didn't live that life. We were always seemed to be city folk in that. But yeah, see, that's what happens when I lose track. Hello, Earl. Thank you for popping in. Yeah, I was just talking about something, and I get distracted. And that's what happens when you hang out with me, you guys. I love delving into topics, and then I love going exploring down side branches and different ideas and different perspectives. and other people's perspectives too, because I spend a lot of time in other people's content, making sure that, that the information that I'm taking in and probably passing it along to others, that it is to the fact and truth. That, right, I don't want to be that person. One of those big things that I strive for is not to lie. Now I understand it happens, we let things slip that are untruths, and whether or not that was imprinted onto us to believe it as a truth, or sometimes in our own ideas we come up with truths ourselves and we put them out there as fact. And these are things that I have to be very, very careful with, because I resonate with a lot of these, wow, profound, deep, and truth quite often. And it's not only fascinating, but it makes me wonder why the general public doesn't practice, right? When it's just what the world needs. This is what I think. It's just what the world needs, is a change, because we're changing, right? We're moving in our next stage of evolution, and with AI, learning with these new directives that we have, like we never thought 100 years ago what we're doing right now, we would never have even given it a thought. It wouldn't have even been a thought. So when you dream of the future and you fantasize it, like this is stuff that they wouldn't have even thought, right? As close as they got was in the 60s, when that beam me up Scotty, the flip phone, right? And but or the Jetsons, right? They had the computer monitor going on. They haven't got the little airplanes, not at the very least in the general public, but the little airplanes that you drive to work and stuff. That would be so cool. I hope I live long enough to see, or live long enough to have my own little flying vehicle where I can just go off and explore true wilderness and just get myself lost and then just scooting into the sky. Right? Don't worry that the roads don't connect to anything. Just bypass all of that. But that's not the idea, is to bypass the experience. Sometimes it's the views out the window towards the destination that are so magnificent, that give us that sense of wonder, like, oh, right. And right, jets make it pretty easy to get us from point A to point B. I'm not afraid of planes, but I much prefer being on the road, and that's the truth. Okay, so I can tell that I'm just kind of going off and didn't have a true subject tonight, but I just want to make sure that in my consistency that I am showing up every night. And even though something that I flow into isn't for me, and sometimes it doesn't make sense, but somewheres along the line it may connect with somebody, even if it's just one sentence. It's happened to me so many times where I go into content and I just want to go to sleep, right? And then they just say one thing, and that one thing just what, right? And then you're just glued. Like Carl Jung last year, mm-mm-mm. He kicked into the conversations every once in a while in the past half a dozen years, but he didn't interest me. His content did not interest me. And it just seems I am in his insights tons as of late. And I'm finding it curious, and I'm finding it curious that I'm finding it curious, right? But at the same time, that shows to me I'm not sure if it's progress because, I remember when I said, "Oh, Carl Jung, no way, I'm never going down that road. I won't even ever understand what's coming out of that guy's head, right?" And then all of a sudden, I get it, and I'm going, "Oh my goodness, is that a good sign or is that a bad? Is that a bad sign?" Right? And it's not like, I take all of this on as truths, but there are truths in that. And I sit in that and I'm going, oh my goodness. And I have found resolution for myself in a lot of his insights. And not only have I found resolution in that, I have found company in that because we find commonalities with everybody, right? If you want to put that effort in, right? If you're a true salesman, if you're a person whose social standings are important, right? That you would make that effort if your livelihood depended on it, right? You make that extra effort. You put that extra effort in, and you just don't have to know them from head to toe, inside out, but enough. And it would be preferable it was something that they were interested in. You knew if they were a bottle digger or a metal detectorist, if you knew, that the BC Lions was their favorite football team, or they loved hockey, or they loved figure skating, like, that you can find, right, a little bit, take a little bit of interest in something and remember that. And the next time that content comes across your path, you go, "Oh, I remember somebody, oh yeah, I remember it was in that." And you know something, you bump into that person again, and it's like butter flowing into that conversation, moving into that relationship that just might be blooming in the moment. But when you have that connection with somebody, you can always find it's just a matter of paying attention and listening, and everybody likes to be seen and likes to be heard, even if they say that they don't. Nobody wants to be insignificant. Nobody wants to be invisible. What we adapt and conquer and do it the best that we can. So, if somebody doesn't come in front of the camera, so back to what I was saying, but about me following, a couple of new content creators, I have to understand this is the age of AI learning. And so it's being able to feel out the content now rather than being able to feel out the person who's presenting it, in the way that they look, in their mannerisms, in their small ticks or their big ticks. Oh my goodness, when I go for job interviews, when I was first going for job interviews, oh my goodness, my lip would be just flippering back and forth, and people would just come straight out and say, "What's going on with your?" And those are the signals, people. When I say that you got to take care of yourself, these are the signals that your body gives you to let you know that you've come up to your emotional capacity, right? You're hitting it. You can't take much more, and it's your job to make that a little bit more comfortable, and that's by doing the same for ourselves, by calming our own systems down, because we've stressed ourselves out in some way. See, look at me, I'm just going off on something else now. Okay, you guys, let's pick a card. You know the scoop. 54 powerful words. We're not going to pull that word community out for a while because I truly gave it a little trim there. So it's buried down there somewhere, and it shouldn't pop up for a while. I will fix it if I am called to fix it. But it was kind of bothering me because it was popping up consistently. Like I said, 54 powerful words. And just in the past month, that word community popped up 5, 6 times, like a lot, right? A lot, enough to make me notice, hopefully, right? That we've got that. I could probably see here which card it is because it's really gimpy and sticking up on one end. Just give me 1 second. I just want to see if that's the card. Nope. Okay, you guys. The day's over now. Make myself a fresh cup of tea, get my pajamas, call it a good, productive day. I've got lots done, right? Even went out. Did I go out today? Oh my goodness, things just. I did go out. I had chores. I had chores today. Oh, I had chores today. Paid the rent, got some bills paid, all proud of myself, frankly. But I'm making it a priority and in taking that stress off of myself, it makes it so those other parts of me are more apt to surface because I'm taking off their plate. That stress, right? Because right, we don't like to have all this stuff breathing down our neck. It makes it so we can't concentrate on what's important, right? I used to say all the time, I don't worry about the small stuff, it's the big stuff. But sometimes, all that small stuff accumulates and it becomes a big thing, and that's what you got to be careful of. Okay, you guys, here we go. Okay, whatever that card is, because I dropped it. And the word is forgiveness. Oh my goodness. Forgiveness is a gift in its giving and its receiving. Oh my goodness. That is so true. When I first woke up to some of these ideas, that breakthrough word for me was forgiveness. And it was in my mother's, right? She was passing and we were able to have a few minutes before that situation happened, right? And it cracked me, and it cracked me kind of in a good way, because I instantly, right, I felt that freedom in my mother's passing. If you've hung out with me for any length of time, I grew up in a very dynamic family, a family of all different types of personalities, and we rubbed on each other. We rubbed up on each other well, and we rubbed each other aggravatively. And that's the truth. And I don't mean to laugh at it, but I laugh at it now in a way because I'm kind of grateful because I had those understandings as to why, right? That laughing was just to say, oh my goodness, if I had only known back then, right? It might have been a little bit of difference in how I grew up, right? The person that I would have become. And in that gift, right? It would have been reciprocated back. It would most definitely, because it's in that honor thy mother and thy father, and we get that mixed up sometimes because when we feel that we have to and not that we want to, right? And then that's where the cracks are that will allow the guilt and shame, because there are those expectations outside of us that says it has to be a certain way, right? I've always judged people by how they treat me and not necessarily in how they treat other people. And that's the truth, because we all rub certain characters badly, I rub people badly, you rub people badly, but it's that dance, right? And that bit of tolerance that we have while we're waiting to accumulate, right? A few more souls out there who might understand that it will take a while for us to be the majority in that, right? Understanding that it takes all kinds to make the world, but we're still busy, busy, right? And I hope at the end of it all, right, that we could actually find that forgiveness, right? Because that's not so hard going forward because AI learning, right? Ignorance will be no excuse. But if we didn't know, right? You can't punish somebody or something in something that was just dangled down as a safety rope or a way to cope with the situation. And I know lots of people who never got it 100% perfect, but in the end I know they would have my back if I needed it, right? And I them. But by other people's perspectives, they'd be like looking at me like, what are you doing, right? Do you know what you're standing next to? And I would have to say, yes, I do. Right? Yes, I do. Sometimes we just look at the outside and we stamp it with our perspective and say, hmm, right? But I've met so many amazing people just by being, oh my goodness. Okay, before we go, oh, forgiveness. Oh, I had a great story. Oh, I'm going to tell you the story. Anyway, I went to a store today, a store I go to all the time, and I walked in, and it's the same salesman there, right? And he comes out and he goes, oh my goodness, I was with one of my customers and I was having a moment. And he says, and as soon as I was having that moment, you popped into my mind. And I thought to myself, I bet you're having an amazing moment. And I said, oh my good. And this is somebody I don't even know his name. I see him all the time, right? Because he's the clerk. But it was so sweet, right? And his face lit up when I said, oh my goodness, she threw me a thought. And it's like, when it's well, like, and I go, tell me, right? And I thought it was so sweet that somebody actually gave me a thought that way. Now I don't know why I felt the need to say that, but it was pertinent to something we were talking about. But forgiveness is a gift in its giving and its receiving, right? Letting just letting it go. And it's not about um um you hear it all the time. It's not like keeping them in your life, right? Giving them second chances, because I think in the truth, when you hit betrayal, um, right? Because in the end, if a relationship breaks, there is some form of letdown that we're going to perceive as betrayal. It's really hard to get back to that state. I know, right? Me and my sister had a falling out a few years ago, and it has been a process, and our relationship is strong, right? But it took a hit, and it took a long time to get us back to this point of where we're at right now, right? So we have to cherish the relationships that we have, and we have to take care of them, right? We have to take care of them. But you know in that hurt and that betrayal and that neglect and that understanding, sometimes we find it hard to forget because you know it's imprinted in us, right? And those scary moments and those things that make us nervous, those things that make us feel stupid or unattractive, right? It takes us right back to that. But if you're able to resolve that, right? If you're able to resolve that and it's resolvable, right? That sense of freedom to have that off your back, that guilt and shame. And that only comes from understanding and putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and not saying letting them off the hook, but understanding, we are in a stage of evolution and, we are changing hopefully into something better and we're going to need to let bygones be bygones, right? We're going to have to let some things go. Doesn't mean to keep them keep them close, right? But in that forgiveness, it's off our mind so that when we do get in those moments of stress and worry, that it doesn't take us back to that scary moment. Because if it takes it back to that scary moment, we can actually switch it to that moment where we forgave. So it's taking you to the negative, but you now have that switch, right? That you can just switch it and just direct it right to that moment. Oh, but I remembered, right? That forgiveness, that feeling, that moment that we had, and it's resolved, right? And eventually, right, it'll stop trying to get under your skin, right? Because lots of times things just find a different host, a different form. They're still around. But forgiveness is a gift and it's giving and receiving. And it's just not for you, but it's also for the recipient. But it's not even just for the recipient. Lots of times there are witnesses in that forgiveness. And, me coming here and telling that story about those moments with my mother, right? That's offering up that story as maybe something to reflect on, maybe in your own life, right? It's something for me, like I said, that it was the first thing that started to crack me open because I was holding on to that grudge and that resentment and that why does nobody else see? Why does nobody else understand? Why doesn't anybody else get it? Right? For so long, not understanding, right? Not everybody is in that stage of evolution and that doesn't mean that they're not going to get there, right? There were lots of moments that might have got me to the point where I might not have been sitting here tonight yapping about these things, right? I'm glad that I'm comfortable in front of the camera, just like my photographs, that I don't want to touch it up. I don't want it to be AI, where you see all those squigglies around my outform of my body because, I got some cute little scene in Hawaii going on in me as I'm talking, or that I'm losing my voice myself and letting AI technology come in and do that job for me and me just stand behind the picture, and that's not putting anybody on the spot because they do that, because I understand too. It took me a long time to come in front of the camera, over a year, and some people will never ever, it doesn't matter what you dangle in front of them, it's not worth it for them because that's just the scariest of the scary in this moment. That doesn't mean that that's forever, right? It's in those baby steps. If that's all you can do before your lip starts twittering, right? then do that and be proud of yourself that you just made that little bit of movement, right? And next time, maybe it'll take 5 minutes before your lips start going off. And the next thing you know, right? Maybe those twitches and nervous habits that we have when we have those social engagements with each other totally disappear. And the next thing you know, you're walking down the aisle with your wife, first wife, right? Because once you have the taste of it, you might want to try a few. And I shouldn't encourage that at all, right? Because I'm a big fan of relationships and being monogamous in those relationships. I am. Okay, you guys, forgiveness. That's the best that I have for you tonight. I'm gonna go in and get my pajamas on, maybe run myself a bath, come in, have a couple of more interactions with the content that I love to take in. And yeah, call it a productive day. Everybody, have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.